Marcus Williams woke up every morning at 5:30 sharp without needing an alarm clock. His small apartment was neat and simple with just the basics he needed. A single bed with military corners, a small kitchen table where he ate his breakfast of toast and coffee, pictures on the wall showing his time in the army many years ago. He had been living this same routine for 15 years now since he started working at the Jefferson County Courthouse. Marcus was 45 years old but looked older because of the serious expression he always wore. His hair was starting to turn gray at the edges and he kept it cut short like he did when he was a soldier. He was not a big man, but he carried himself straight and walked with purpose. People who saw him might think he was just another security guard, but Marcus was much more than that. He had stories and experiences that most people would never guess just by looking at him. Every morning Marcus would put on his dark blue security uniform and check himself in the mirror. The uniform was always clean and pressed. His badge was polished and his shoes were shined. He took pride in his appearance even though most people barely noticed him. Marcus believed that doing a job well meant doing it completely, no matter how small others might think it was. The drive to the courthouse took Marcus through the older part of town where he had grown up. He would pass the school he attended as a child and the park where he used to play. Sometimes he would see the same people waiting for the bus or walking their dogs. Marcus knew this neighborhood and these people, even though most of them did not know him. He felt responsible for protecting this community and everyone in it. At 6:45, Marcus would arrive at the Jefferson County Courthouse. The building was impressive with tall marble columns and wide stone steps leading to the entrance. It had been built 50 years ago when the county had money to spend on making government buildings look important. Inside, the lobby was spacious with high ceilings and polished floors that echoed when people walked across them. Large windows let in natural light during the day, and expensive-looking light fixtures hung from the ceiling. Marcus had his own small office in the basement of the courthouse, but he spent most of his time at the security checkpoint in the main lobby. The metal detector and X-ray machine were his tools for keeping dangerous items out of the building. He also had a desk with monitors that showed him camera feeds from different areas of the courthouse. Marcus knew every corner of this building and every person who worked there. The other security guards who worked different shifts were friendly enough, but Marcus kept mostly to himself. He was polite and professional, but he did not join them for lunch or drinks after work. Some of them thought Marcus was unfriendly, but the truth was that Marcus was always watching and thinking. He noticed things that others missed. He remembered faces and behaviors. He was constantly alert even when everything seemed calm and normal. Marcus had learned to be observant during his time in the military. He had served for 8 years in the army, including 2 tours overseas. He had been a military police officer, which meant he was responsible for security and investigating problems on the base. Marcus had seen dangerous situations and learned how to spot trouble before it happened. He knew that the most dangerous moments often came when everything seemed peaceful and safe. After leaving the army, Marcus had tried different jobs, but nothing felt right. He worked construction for a while, but missed the sense of purpose he had felt as a soldier. He tried working in a factory, but the routine was boring and meaningless. When he saw the job opening for courthouse security, Marcus knew it was perfect for him. He could use his skills to protect people and serve his community. The work was important even if others did not understand that. Most people who came through the courthouse security checkpoint were in a hurry. They had court dates or meetings or paperwork to file. They wanted to get through the metal detector quickly and be on their way. Marcus checked their identification and belongings thoroughly but efficiently. He was always polite and professional. Some people thanked him, but most barely acknowledged his presence. Marcus did not mind. He was not doing the job for recognition or praise. The lawyers who worked in the courthouse saw Marcus every day, but few of them knew his name. To them, he was just the security guard who checked their briefcases and waved them through. Some of the younger lawyers would nod or say good morning, but the more experienced ones often acted like Marcus was invisible. They were focused on their cases and their careers, and a security guard was just part of the background. The judges were even more distant. They entered through a separate entrance and rarely interacted with courthouse security except when there were special events or security concerns. Marcus knew all of their names and faces, but they probably could not pick him out of a crowd. This was especially true of Judge Patricia Hawthorne, who had a reputation for being cold and demanding with anyone she considered beneath her station. Marcus spent his lunch breaks walking around the courthouse and the surrounding area. He would check the parking garage and the back entrances. He would note which cars were parked where and if there were any strangers hanging around. Other people might think he was being paranoid, but Marcus knew that security was about preventing problems before they happened. A good security officer was always thinking about what could go wrong and how to stop it in the evenings. Marcus would go home to his quiet apartment and review the day in his mind. He would think about the people he had seen and whether anything had seemed unusual. He would plan for the next day and consider what might require extra attention. Marcus kept a small notebook where he wrote down important observations and patterns he noticed. Most days nothing significant happened, but Marcus knew that being prepared was what made the difference when something did happen. On weekends, Marcus would visit the library and read books about security and law enforcement. He took online courses to learn about new technologies and techniques. He studied the layout of the courthouse building and memorized the locations of exits and emergency equipment. Marcus was constantly improving his knowledge and skills, even though no one required him to do so. Marcus also volunteered at the local Veterans Center, helping other former soldiers adjust to civilian life. He understood how difficult it could be to find purpose and meaning after military service. Some veterans struggled with jobs that seemed unimportant compared to their military duties. Marcus tried to help them understand that any job could be meaningful if you approached it with the right attitude and commitment. The truth was that Marcus Williams was much more than a quiet security guard. He was a trained professional who took his responsibilities seriously. He was a protector who watched over the courthouse and everyone in it. He was a veteran who continued to serve his country and community in a different way. But most people who saw him every day had no idea who he really was or what he was capable of doing when the situation required it. Judge Patricia Hawthorne was known throughout Jefferson County as the toughest judge in the courthouse. At 52 years old, she had worked her way from a small law firm to become one of the most respected and feared judges in the state. Her courtroom was always packed with lawyers who knew they had to be at their absolute best when appearing before her. She did not tolerate mistakes or unprepared arguments, and she was quick to let everyone know when they had disappointed her. Patricia had grown up in a wealthy family where success was expected and failure was not an option. Her father was a prominent businessman and her mother was active in high society charity events. From a young age, Patricia learned that appearance and reputation were everything. She attended the best schools and graduated at the top of her class in law school. Every step of her career had been carefully planned to lead her to a position of power and influence. The judge lived in a large house in the most expensive part of town. Her home was decorated with expensive furniture and artwork that impressed visitors and showed her status in the community. She drove a luxury car and wore designer clothes that cost more than most people made in a month. Patricia believed that looking successful was part of being successful, and she never appeared in public unless she was perfectly dressed and groomed. In the courthouse, Patricia was known for her sharp tongue and quick temper. She demanded respect from everyone who entered her courtroom, and she was not shy about putting people in their place when they failed to meet her standards. Young lawyers were often terrified to appear before her because she had a reputation for making them look foolish if they were not completely prepared. Even experienced attorneys approached her courtroom with caution and extra preparation. Patricia had little patience for people she considered beneath her social status. She believed that some people were meant to lead and others were meant to follow. She had worked hard to reach her position, and she felt that gave her the right to look down on those who had not achieved the same level of success. This attitude extended to courthouse staff, including security guards, janitors, and clerks who she barely acknowledged as human beings. Every morning, Patricia would arrive at the courthouse in her expensive car and park in the space reserved for judges. She would walk through the main entrance with her head held high and her expensive heels clicking on the marble floor. She carried herself like someone who owned the building and everyone in it. People would step aside to let her pass, and conversations would stop when she walked by. Patricia rarely spoke to the security guards, except when absolutely necessary. She saw them as minimum wage workers who lacked the intelligence or ambition to do anything more meaningful with their lives. She especially looked down on Marcus Williams, who had been working the same security job for 15 years. To Patricia, this proved that Marcus was content with mediocrity and had no desire to improve his situation in life. The judge had never bothered to learn Marcus's name or anything about his background. To her, he was just another faceless security guard who checked bags and operated metal detectors. She had made comments about him to other judges and lawyers, suggesting that some people were simply born to work in service positions. Patricia believed that successful people like herself were naturally superior to working-class people, like security guards. Patricia's courtroom was on the third floor of the courthouse and was considered the most prestigious assignment in the building. The room was large, with dark wood paneling and expensive furnishings that reflected the serious nature of the legal proceedings that took place there. Her desk was elevated above the rest of the courtroom so she could look down on the lawyers and defendants who appeared before her. This physical arrangement reinforced her psychological position of authority and power. The cases that came before Patricia were often complex and high-profile. She handled major criminal cases, corporate disputes, and civil lawsuits that involved large amounts of money or important legal principles. Newspaper reporters regularly attended her trials, and her decisions were often quoted in legal journals and law school textbooks. Patricia enjoyed the attention and recognition that came with handling important cases. Patricia had a small group of close friends who were also successful professionals in the community. They would meet for expensive lunches and attend charity events together. Their conversations usually centered around their careers, their investments, and their social activities. Patricia felt comfortable with these people because they shared her values and her belief that success was the most important measure of a person's worth. The judge had been married once, but the marriage had ended in divorce after 5 years. Her husband had complained that she cared more about her career than their relationship and that she was never satisfied with anything he accomplished. Patricia had not remarried because she felt that few men could match her level of success and ambition. She preferred to focus on her career rather than compromise her goals for a relationship. Patricia's daily routine at the courthouse was carefully structured and predictable. She would arrive at exactly 8:30 and spend 30 minutes reviewing her cases in her private office. At 9 o'clock she would enter her courtroom and begin hearing cases. She took a precise 1-hour lunch break and returned to work until 5 o'clock. Her assistant knew better than to interrupt her schedule unless there was a genuine emergency. During her breaks, Patricia would sometimes walk through the courthouse hallways observing the activity around her. She enjoyed seeing the busy lawyers and court staff because it reminded her of her important position in the system. She would note which lawyers seemed nervous or unprepared and which ones carried themselves with confidence. Patricia believed she could judge a person's character and abilities just by watching how they behaved in the courthouse environment. Patricia had little understanding of or interest in the lives of the working-class people who kept the courthouse running. She did not think about the security guards who protected the building or the janitors who cleaned it or the clerks who processed paperwork. These people existed in the background of her world, but she did not consider them important enough to deserve her attention or consideration. The judge had received several awards and honors during her career, including recognition from the State Bar Association and invitations to speak at legal conferences. She kept these awards displayed prominently in her office where visitors could see them. Patricia believed that public recognition was important because it validated her success and reinforced her status in the legal community. Patricia was completely unaware that her dismissive attitude toward courthouse staff had been noticed and remembered by the people she looked down upon. She did not realize that her comments about security guards and other workers had hurt feelings and created resentment. She was so focused on her own career and status that she could not see how her behavior affected others around her. On this particular Tuesday morning, Patricia was feeling especially confident and self-important. She had just finished a high-profile case that had received positive coverage in the local newspaper. Several lawyers had complimented her handling of complex legal issues, and she was expecting to receive another professional award soon. As she walked through the courthouse that morning, she felt like she was at the peak of her career and that nothing could challenge her position of authority and respect. Patricia had no idea that this ordinary Tuesday would become the day that would completely change how she saw herself and the people around her. The quiet security guard she had mocked and dismissed for years was about to prove that her assumptions about success and worth were completely wrong. Tuesday morning started like any other day at the Jefferson County Courthouse, but there was an unusual energy in the air that Marcus could feel as soon as he arrived for work. The parking lot was fuller than normal, and he could see news vans setting up near the front entrance. Today was the beginning of a major embezzlement trial involving Robert Chen, a prominent local businessman who had been accused of stealing millions of dollars from his company and several charity organizations. Marcus had read about the case in the newspaper and knew it would bring extra attention to the courthouse. Robert Chen was well known in the community as a successful entrepreneur and philanthropist. Many people found it hard to believe that someone so respected could be guilty of such serious crimes. The case had divided public opinion, with some people supporting Chen and others demanding justice for the victims who had lost their life savings. As Marcus set up his security station that morning, he noticed the increased activity around the building. More lawyers than usual were arriving early, carrying extra briefcases and boxes of documents. Court reporters and stenographers were wheeling in additional equipment. The hallways buzzed with conversation as people discussed the upcoming trial and speculated about what might happen. The media presence was significant, with reporters from local television stations and newspapers positioning themselves to get the best coverage of the trial. Marcus watched them carefully as they went through security, knowing that high-profile cases sometimes attracted people with bad intentions. He had learned during his military service that crowds and publicity could create opportunities for troublemakers who wanted to make a statement or cause disruption. Judge Patricia Hawthorne was assigned to preside over the Chen embezzlement case, which was considered one of the most important trials of the year. Marcus knew that she would be even more demanding and particular than usual because the case would receive extensive media coverage. Her reputation as a tough judge would be on display for the entire community to see, and she would want everything to run perfectly. 8:45 Judge Hawthorne arrived at the courthouse later than her usual time. Marcus could see that she was already agitated by the crowds and media attention outside the building. She walked through the security checkpoint with her typical air of authority, but Marcus noticed that she seemed more tense than normal. Jaw was set tight, and her movements were sharper and more abrupt than usual. As Judge Hawthorne approached the metal detector, she looked directly at Marcus with an expression that mixed annoyance and condescension. The delay caused by the extra security procedures for the media equipment was clearly frustrating her, and she was looking for someone to blame. Marcus continued his work professionally and efficiently, but he could sense that the judge was building up to one of her typical dismissive comments. "Still playing security guard, I see," Judge Hawthorne said in a voice loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. Her tone was sharp and cutting, designed to make Marcus feel small and unimportant. "Some people never aspire to more than watching doors," she continued with a slight smile that did not reach her eyes. The comment was meant to put Marcus in his place and remind everyone present of the social hierarchy that existed in the courthouse. Several lawyers who were waiting in line heard the judge's comment and reacted with nervous laughter. They were uncomfortable with her public humiliation of a courthouse employee, but none of them had the courage to defend Marcus or challenge her behavior. The power dynamics in the courthouse made it dangerous for anyone to cross Judge Hawthorne, especially over something involving a security guard. Marcus felt the familiar sting of the judge's words, but he did not let his emotions show on his face. He had endured similar comments from her many times over the years and had developed a thick skin for such treatment. However, something about this particular comment felt different, maybe because it was delivered in front of so many people, or maybe because Marcus was feeling the extra stress of the high-security day. For just a moment, Marcus's professional mask slipped and Judge Hawthorne could see a flicker of something in his eyes. It was not anger or resentment, but rather a deep sadness and disappointment. The look lasted only a second before Marcus regained his composure and continued his work, but it was enough to make the judge feel slightly uncomfortable, though she quickly pushed the feeling aside. The morning proceeded with its usual routine. As people filed through security and made their way to various courtrooms throughout the building, Marcus checked identification cards and bags with his typical thoroughness while keeping an eye on the overall security situation. The extra crowds and media presence required him to be even more alert than usual, but he handled the increased workload without any problems. Around 10 o'clock, the Chen trial began in Judge Hawthorne's courtroom on the 3rd floor. Marcus could hear the increased foot traffic and elevator activity as people made their way to observe the proceedings. The courthouse was buzzing with energy and anticipation as one of the biggest trials in recent memory got underway. Everyone, it seemed, focused on the drama unfolding in the courtroom. Marcus remained at his post in the lobby, monitoring the security cameras and checking people as they entered the building. He noticed that the crowds were starting to thin out as most of the trial observers had already made their way upstairs. The morning rush was ending and the courthouse was settling into its normal rhythm despite the unusual circumstances of the high-profile trial. At 10:20, Marcus noticed something that immediately caught his attention. A man in his 30s, wearing an ill-fitting dark suit, was lingering near the elevators in a way that seemed suspicious. The man kept checking his watch and looking around nervously as if he was waiting for something or someone. His behavior stood out because most people in the courthouse moved with purpose toward their destinations. Marcus had developed an instinct for spotting unusual behavior during his years of military service in courthouse security work. This man was displaying several warning signs that suggested he might be planning something dangerous. He was sweating despite the cool air conditioning in the building. His eyes kept darting toward the elevators that led to the upper floors where the courtrooms were located. Most concerning of all, he seemed to be trying hard to blend in and appear normal. That the man was carrying a briefcase, which was not unusual for someone visiting the courthouse, but something about the way he held it seemed wrong to Marcus. The briefcase appeared heavier than it should be for legal documents, and the man gripped it tightly as if he was afraid of dropping it or having someone take it from him. Marcus made a mental note to keep watching this individual while continuing to process other people through security. Marcus discreetly observed the suspicious man while maintaining his normal duties at the security checkpoint. Years of training had taught him how to watch potential threats without making them aware of his attention. He noted the man's physical description, his clothing, and his behavior patterns in case he needed to provide information to other security personnel or law enforcement officers. The man continued to linger near the elevators for several more minutes, occasionally checking his watch and looking toward the stairs that led to the upper floors. Marcus could see that he was becoming more agitated and nervous as time passed. Whatever the man was planning, Marcus sensed that it was going to happen soon and that it would likely involve the courtrooms upstairs, where Judge Hawthorne and hundreds of other people were going about their normal business, completely unaware of the potential danger developing in the lobby below. Marcus kept his eyes on the suspicious man while continuing to check bags and identification at the security station. The man had now been lingering near the elevators for almost 10 minutes, which was far too long for someone who had legitimate business in the courthouse. Normal visitors would either go directly to their destination or ask for directions if they were lost. This man was clearly waiting for something, and his nervous behavior was becoming more obvious by the minute. The man kept wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief, even though the courthouse lobby was kept at a comfortable temperature. His breathing appeared shallow and rapid, like someone who was extremely anxious or preparing for physical activity. Marcus had seen this type of behavior before during his military service when soldiers were getting ready for dangerous missions. The signs all pointed to someone who was about to take action that would change everything. Marcus noticed that the man's jacket was hanging oddly on one side, as if there was something heavy in an inside pocket. When the man turned slightly to check the time on the wall clock, Marcus caught a glimpse of what looked like a metallic object beneath the fabric. His heart rate increased as he realized that the suspicious individual was likely carrying a weapon into the courthouse despite having passed through the metal detector earlier. The security system at the courthouse was good but not perfect. Marcus knew that determined individuals could sometimes find ways to bring dangerous items into the building. There were blind spots in the screening process, and experienced criminals or terrorists often studied security procedures to find weaknesses they could exploit. This man had clearly done his homework and planned his approach carefully. Marcus reached slowly for his radio to call for backup without alerting the suspicious man to his awareness of the situation. He needed to be extremely careful because any sudden movements or obvious security responses could trigger the man to act immediately. The lobby still had several innocent people moving through it, and Marcus did not want to put them in danger by causing a panic or confrontation in the crowded space. The man suddenly straightened up and began walking toward the elevators with determined steps. His nervous fidgeting stopped and was replaced by a focused intensity that Marcus recognized as the moment when someone had made a final decision to carry out their plan. The man pressed the elevator button and stood waiting for the doors to open while checking his watch one more time. Marcus realized that he was running out of time to prevent whatever was about to happen upstairs. The elevators would take the man directly to the third floor, where Judge Hawthorne was presiding over the Chen embezzlement trial. There were dozens of people in that courtroom, including lawyers, court staff, media, representatives, and members of the public, who had come to observe the high-profile proceedings. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and the suspicious man stepped inside. As he turned to face forward, Marcus saw his jacket fall open slightly, revealing the unmistakable outline of a handgun tucked into a shoulder holster. The man's eyes met Marcus's for just a moment, and Marcus saw something cold and determined in that gaze. This was not someone who was going to change his mind or be talked out of his plan. Marcus made a split-second decision that would determine whether people lived or died that day. He stepped away from his security post and began moving quickly, but quietly, toward the stairs that led to the upper floors. He could not wait for backup to arrive because the elevator would reach the third floor in less than a minute. Marcus was the only person in position to intercept the threat before it reached the courtroom. As Marcus climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time, his military training took over completely. His breathing became controlled and steady. His mind focused on the tactical situation and the options available to him. He thought about the layout of the third floor and where the man would most likely go when he exited the elevator. Marcus had walked these hallways thousands of times and knew every corner and doorway. The third-floor hallway was busy with people moving between courtrooms and offices. Marcus could see that the elevator had already arrived and the doors were opening. The suspicious man stepped out and began walking toward Judge Hawthorne's courtroom with the same determined stride Marcus had observed in the lobby. His right hand was now positioned near his jacket, where Marcus knew the weapon was hidden. Marcus increased his pace while trying not to attract attention from the people in the hallway. He needed to get close enough to the man to stop him before he could draw his weapon and threaten innocent people. The distance between them was closing, but Marcus knew he would have only one chance to act before the situation became deadly for everyone involved. The man was now only 20 feet from the courtroom door where Judge Hawthorne was conducting the Chen trial. Marcus could hear the sound of legal proceedings through the partially open door and knew that dozens of unsuspecting people were sitting inside, completely unaware of the danger approaching them. The man's hand moved toward his jacket, and Marcus knew he was about to draw his weapon. Marcus closed the final distance between himself and the threat in 3 quick strides. Years of hand-to-hand combat training from his military service guided his movements as he approached the man from behind. Marcus knew exactly where to strike to disable an armed opponent without giving them a chance to use their weapon. The element of surprise was his greatest advantage in this moment. The confrontation happened so quickly that most people in the hallway did not immediately understand what was occurring. Marcus grabbed the man's right arm to prevent him from drawing his weapon while simultaneously using his other hand to control the man's balance and movement. The suspicious individual tried to resist, but Marcus's training and experience gave him a decisive advantage in the physical struggle. Within seconds, Marcus had the man on the ground, with his arm twisted behind his back in a submission hold that made it impossible for him to reach his weapon. The man's briefcase fell open during the struggle, revealing additional ammunition and what appeared to be a detailed plan written on several sheets of paper. Other people in the hallway began to realize that something serious was happening and started backing away from the scene. Marcus used his radio to call for immediate backup while maintaining control of the dangerous individual. His voice was calm and professional as he requested police and additional security personnel to respond to the third floor. He also asked for the courthouse to be placed on lockdown to prevent any other potential threats from entering or leaving the building. The man continued to struggle and began shouting threats directed at Judge Hawthorne and the people in her courtroom. His words revealed that he had been planning this attack for weeks and that he blamed the judge for ruining his life through a previous court case. Marcus realized that this was not a random act of violence but a carefully planned revenge attack against a specific target. Police officers arrived within minutes and took custody of the attacker, while courthouse security began evacuating the building as a precaution. Marcus remained at the scene to provide a detailed report of what he had observed and how he had stopped the threat. His calm professionalism and thorough documentation impressed the responding officers, who recognized that his quick thinking had prevented a tragedy. Judge Hawthorne emerged from her courtroom to find the hallway filled with police officers and security personnel. She had no idea what had happened outside her door or how close she and everyone in her courtroom had come to being victims of a violent attack. The courthouse hallway was filled with the controlled chaos that follows a serious security incident. Police officers secured the scene while paramedics checked both Marcus and the attacker for injuries. Detective Sarah Martinez was the lead investigator assigned to the case, and she immediately began interviewing witnesses and collecting evidence. The briefcase that had fallen open during the struggle contained disturbing materials that revealed the true scope of what had almost happened. But inside the briefcase, police found a detailed floor plan of the courthouse with Judge Hawthorne's courtroom clearly marked in red ink. There were photographs of the judge entering and leaving the building taken over several days. A typed manifesto explained the attacker's grievances against Judge Hawthorne, who had sentenced him to prison 3 years earlier for domestic violence charges. The man had spent months planning his revenge attack and had studied the courthouse security procedures to find the best way to carry out his plan. Detective Martinez was amazed by the thoroughness of Marcus's actions and his detailed observations of the suspicious behavior. She had worked many cases involving courthouse security but had rarely seen such professional awareness and quick thinking from a security guard. Marcus provided precise descriptions of everything he had noticed, including the exact times and locations of the attacker's movements through the building. The weapon recovered from the attacker was a 9mm handgun loaded with hollow-point bullets designed to cause maximum damage. Ballistics experts later determined that the gun had been stolen from a sporting goods store 2 months earlier. The attacker had also been carrying 3 additional magazines of ammunition, which meant he had been prepared for an extended confrontation that could have resulted in multiple casualties. Word of the incident spread quickly through the courthouse. As employees and visitors learned about how close they had come to experiencing a deadly attack, many people who had been in Judge Hawthorne's courtroom that morning realized that Marcus's actions had likely saved their lives. The story began to circulate among lawyers, judges, and court staff who had never paid much attention to the quiet security guard before this day. Judge Hawthorne learned the full details of what had happened from Detective Martinez, who briefed her on the investigation. The judge was shaken to discover that someone had been planning to kill her and that the attack had been prevented by the same security guard she had mocked just hours earlier. She read the attacker's manifesto, which contained specific threats against her and detailed plans for carrying out the violence in her courtroom. The local news media quickly picked up the story of the prevented courthouse attack. Television reporters, when interviewed police officials and courthouse employees about the incident, Marcus was praised by law enforcement officials as a hero who had prevented a potential massacre through his vigilance and quick action. The contrast between his heroic behavior and Judge Hawthorne's earlier dismissive comments became a topic of discussion throughout the community. Marcus spent several hours giving detailed statements to police investigators and federal agents who were called in because the incident involved a threat against a federal judge. He remained calm and professional throughout the process, providing accurate information that helped investigators understand exactly how the attack had been planned and prevented. His military background was evident in the precise way he recalled events and described his tactical response to the threat. Judge Hawthorne found herself unable to concentrate on her normal duties for the rest of the day. The Chen embezzlement trial was postponed while the courthouse underwent additional security procedures. She kept thinking about Marcus's actions and her own behavior toward him over the years. The realization that someone she had treated so poorly had risked his own safety to protect her was deeply troubling and humbling. In the late afternoon, as the courthouse was returning to normal operations, Judge Hawthorne made her way down to the lobby where Marcus had returned to his security post. She approached him slowly, feeling uncertain about what to say. This was perhaps the first time in her career that she had been at a loss for words. Marcus looked up from his monitors and stood respectfully as she approached his desk. Judge Hawthorne began by thanking Marcus for his actions that morning, but her words felt inadequate to express the magnitude of what he had done. She asked him about his background and learned for the first time that he was a decorated military veteran who had served 2 tours of duty overseas. Marcus explained that he had been a military police officer responsible for base security and criminal investigations. Marcus told Judge Hawthorne that he had chosen courthouse security as his civilian career because he believed in protecting the justice system and the people who worked within it. He explained that he took continuing education courses in security and law enforcement techniques on his own time because he wanted to be as effective as possible in his job. His quiet demeanor and humble attitude made Judge Hawthorne realize how wrong she had been about his character and abilities. The judge learned that Marcus had been quietly observing and protecting the courthouse for 15 years without recognition or appreciation from the people he served. He had prevented several smaller incidents over the years that could have escalated into serious problems. Marcus had also assisted police with investigations by providing security camera footage and witness observations that helped solve crimes in and around the courthouse. Judge Hawthorne discovered that Marcus volunteered at the local Veterans Center, helping other former soldiers transition to civilian careers. He had used his own money to take advanced training courses in threat assessment and emergency response. Several police officers had recommended Marcus for commendations over the years, but the courthouse administration had never acted on these recommendations. As their conversation continued, Judge Hawthorne began to understand that Marcus represented everything she had claimed to value but had failed to recognize. He was dedicated, professional, intelligent, and committed to serving others. His work was meaningful and important, even though it was not prestigious or well paid. Marcus had found purpose and satisfaction in protecting his community rather than seeking personal recognition or advancement. The judge realized that her assumptions about success and worth had been completely wrong. She had measured people by their job titles and social status rather than their character and contributions. Marcus had shown more courage, integrity, and professionalism in one morning than many people demonstrated in their entire careers. His quiet strength and humble service were far more admirable than her own pursuit of power and recognition. Judge Hawthorne apologized to Marcus for her years of dismissive treatment and disrespectful comments. She acknowledged that she had been wrong to judge him based on his job title rather than his character and abilities. Marcus accepted her apology graciously and without bitterness, showing the same dignity he had always maintained despite her poor treatment of him. The incident changed Judge Hawthorne's perspective on the people around her and her own role in the courthouse community. She began to notice and appreciate the contributions of court staff, security personnel, and other employees she had previously ignored. She made an effort to learn their names and acknowledge their work. Her courtroom became a more respectful and collaborative environment as a result of her changed attitude. Marcus continued his work as a courthouse security guard, but his role was now recognized and valued by everyone in the building. Judge Hawthorne recommended him for official commendations and worked to ensure that his contributions to courthouse safety were properly acknowledged. The quiet guardian who had protected them all for so many years was finally seen for who he truly was, a professional dedicated to serving others and keeping his community safe. The story of Marcus Williams and Judge Patricia Hawthorne became a reminder that true worth is measured by character and service rather than status and recognition. Sometimes the most important work is done quietly by people who never seek praise or acknowledgement, but who stand ready to protect others when danger threatens.